Get NFL Sunday Ticket at its lowest price ever and watch every game every Sunday. Take your NFL experience to even greater heights with NFL Sunday Ticket Deluxe, which gives you Red Zone, bringing you the final yards from around the league along with minute-to-minute NFL fantasy updates. Call us at 601-8992 to sign up today.
Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned into MB12 Weekend, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Coming up tonight in news, the president of the Bahamas Police Staff Association says officers need to know more about the Christie administration's new crime strategy. The Christian Council president calls for the death penalty to be carried out. This year's hurricane season pretty lackluster so far. We'll tell you why. Plus, getting your kids in the business state of mind. We've got those stories and so much more coming up. I'm Paige McCartney, and MB12 Weekend starts right now. Welcome once again to MB12 Weekend. The Minister of National Security's announcement on Friday that police would be working 12-hour shifts to push back against the recent spike in violent crime took many people by surprise, including thousands of Royal Bahamas Police Force officers whose first time hearing it was when the public did. Today, Juan McCartney sat down with the president of the Police Staff Association, who explained why rank-and-file officers aren't warming up to this new policy. Here's that story.
When the Minister of National Security was making his announcement about the 12-hour shift on Friday at police headquarters, members of the Executive Committee of the Police Staff Association were also at headquarters, though not in the same room as Nottage. Members of the Staff Association say now that they feel as though they weren't given the respect as an association, and though they don't have a specific problem with working 12-hour shifts, they do have many questions about the deployment, compensation, and structure involved with such a program.
In fact, Police Staff Association Chairman Inspector Dwight Smith said as of Sunday evening, his executives had still not received any formal communication from anyone in government or the police force about the change that he understands went into effect Saturday. He said the association feels shunned and that officers have been taken advantage of. Nevertheless, he said that there have been studies done in police forces throughout the world about a 12-hour shift, and many have found that it can work under the right circumstances, but it can't be implemented at the end of a regular work week.
And so when you immediately put a 12-hour shift, if you have not given them an opportunity to even sit down with their families, so I mean, are you really thinking about them? I understand there is a crime level that we need to put under control. But certainly the person who we need to fight, if we are not treating them well, how we expect them to be the warriors that we would want them to be? So, we need to take a different look at that.
Smith said what should be happening if the 12-hour shift has to be implemented is that officers should work 2 days on and have the next 48 hours off. But he said there are other challenges presented by a 12-hour system other than fatigue.
Most police officers are males, so they're the fathers. You're taking the father away from the home for a long period of time. Would the nursery be open later to accommodate those persons working 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. See, so all these things are, you got to put it in, because most nurseries are not open around that time. But if you have a facility which is right in the police department for police officers, children, then all of that should be in the part of the planning of a 12-hour shift, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you put that on a weekday, whatever banking needs I had, whatever other things that needed to be done in those agencies that only opens between an hour of 9 to 5, that creates a problem.
Smith said there were 4 shift systems in place, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., 4 p.m. to midnight, midnight to 8 a.m., and a relief shift. He said what's happening now is that officers will be working 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., effectively doubling the force's available manpower.
If we revert into a 12-hour shift, then we must acknowledge then we have a shortage of manpower. And then in addition, where we hear that we're going to have our good colleagues coming from the defense force to complement, definitely we have a real shortage of manpower if that is the case. Or we're not doing our deployment properly.
Smith said he also understands that police officers on vacation have been called in.
I just don't know. Are we saying now that as a country we are at a crisis that really calls for that? I don't think so. I don't think so. I've traveled around the Caribbean. What we are seeing happening is happening all over the places. I still believe we need to put proper strategies in place to combat crime, but it must not be at the detrimental of the police officer or the law enforcement officer, because you still need that same person that we're working this week for a full 12-hour shift. We need them next week to perform.
Then there's the issue of compensation for officers, which Smith is also not clear about.
There should be compensation for it. I think it should be a short-lived compensation.
Smith said police officers, of course, have no choice but to comply with orders from senior command. However, he said he encourages officers to work smart while the new shift hours are in place. He also said the association normally has a good relationship with the senior command of the force, but this latest matter should have been communicated better. Reporting for MB12, I'm Juan McCartney.
While Christian Council President Reverend Dr. Ranford Patterson applauds the efforts the government has put in place to stem crime with this recently announced initiative, he says there's still one law government must enforce in order to see real change. He's talking about the death penalty. Patterson said while there are many denominations within the Bahamas Christian Council that do not agree with capital punishment, the body's stance on the matter is that if the law remains on the books, it should be carried out.
The Christian Council position is there are laws on the books. That's the Christian Council position. And we believe that all laws ought to be carried out. Now, like I said, there are some denominations within our grouping who feels that that's not an option, and they have a right to do that. But there are some who believe strongly that the death penalty is a necessity, and it should be carried out. And so, which one is right and which is wrong, I don't know.
Well, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Immigration Fred Mitchell today calling the uproar over the alleged abuse of Cuban detainees at the Carmichael Road Detention Center a storm in a teacup. Mitchell told attendees at New Covenant Baptist Church today that after all the hullabaloo and ill-informed commentary, the storm is over. He said it was nothing when compared to the issues of the unemployment and the fight against crime. He claimed the result of the situation yet again displays the victory of rationality over irrationality. However, he called it a lesson slowly learned. Mitchell again said the government was not engaged in any abuse or cover-up and at all times indicated that an investigation into the allegations would continue and will be done. Mitchell said his job is to be the face of the country and to defend the country in the face of public attacks such as those from Democracy Movement, the Miami-based group that advocated for the release of those detainees. Mitchell said remaining friends with both the United States and Cuba is a difficult balancing act. Mitchell said it's only a matter of time before the two countries will be reconciled, and the Bahamas must prepare for that time by remaining calm, friendly, and rational with all. Mitchell said Bahamians must uphold their institutions as they are all they have. And on a side note about the Tribune story on Friday that claimed Prime Minister Perry Christie said he was too tired to talk to the paper about various matters, Mitchell said the Prime Minister called that story a complete fabrication. He said he spoke to the Prime Minister this morning, and Christie said he never spoke to any Tribune reporter. Well, weather forecasters predicted an above-average 2013 Atlantic hurricane season, but so far, it's been a bit of a dud. Not that we're complaining. So far this year, there have been numerous tropical storms, but no hurricanes since June. This has only happened 5 times in the past 50 years. Since 1960, only 1967, 1984, 1988, and 1994 and 2001 had no hurricanes formed in June, July, or August. We asked meteorologist Wayne Neely why.
First of all, you have the presence of Sahara dust, and that's inhibiting the growth and development of the systems. And that typically you normally have Sahara dust around April, May, and June. But this year has been unusually later. We've seen it actually as far as July and August. And that what happens is that once the dry air gets into the system, it takes a bit of moist air that the system needs to generate and to develop into a hurricane, and that has not been happening. And also you also have strong upper level winds in the upper atmosphere that also inhibited the growth. Actually, what happens is that as soon as the thunderstorms develop, the strong winds, or what we call wind shear in the upper atmosphere, is actually decapitating the storm itself.
However, Neely says you shouldn't let your guard down just yet. In 1967, there was Hurricane Arlene. In 1984, there was Hurricane Diana. And in 1988, there was Hurricane Gilbert. There were also hurricanes in 1994 and 2001.
It's only happened 5 times since 1960 when we really started tracking hurricanes in a significant way with satellites. And that's really, really very rare. We don't have that normally. But I must warn you that all 5 of those times those hurricanes formed late in season from September onwards. There was always a major hurricane that formed afterwards in the Atlantic, and so that means we're not out of the woods yet. So we're advising people not to let their guards down because we have a London hurricane formation. It doesn't mean that you should throw your preparation out the door. Definitely the peak of the hurricane season is not until September 11.
And it's been 99 years since there was a hurricane season where no hurricanes formed. Here's some tips on how to prepare this year if you haven't gotten started already.
You should make sure your roofs are up to par, your trees are trimmed, and those things. And you can start stocking on like canned goods, which you can use after the season if there's no hurricane. So things like that you should already start to prepare for.
Forecasters predict 18 tropical storms for this Atlantic hurricane season, of which 9 hurricanes should form. The prediction follows last year's forecast when nearly twice as many storms formed as had been predicted. A typical year based on weather records that go back to 1950 has 12 tropical storms, of which 7 are normally hurricanes. Last year, 19 storms formed, including 10 hurricanes. These included Hurricane Sandy, which slammed the northeast coast of the U.S. in October, killing dozens and leading to billions of dollars in damage. 3 straight Atlantic hurricane seasons have had 19 storms. The first named storms of the Atlantic hurricane season are Andrea, Barry, Chantal, Dorian, and Erin.